Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. There's nothing more than I love seeing a packed house for wonderful people. And so very excited to open up the space today. I did want to give folks a few heads up. There are restrooms right around here to the right. If you need gender inclusive options, they're on the second floor. We're so excited for everybody to be here. Be keeping in mind question and answer for all of our amazing experts because we will have time at the end of the event for that. But Community Plus Values is super honored and excited today to plan this event with Advancement and the Provost's office. And Community Plus Values is about focusing on inclusion and belonging for our entire community. And so I do want to start with a land acknowledgement before we begin. So I want to take a moment in the spirit of healing and peace to acknowledge and honor the indigenous peoples of the land upon which the University of Denver stands, the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute tribes. Like the history of so many institutions in the American West, ours is complex and sometimes painful. In recognition of this fact and to underscore our commitment to inclusion and equity, we commit to listen to and affirm the stories of all in our community, and we do invite you to visit the DU Native American and Indigenous Initiatives website to learn more about all the amazing work that's being done here and to learn more about the Native Student Alliance. And with that, I am excited to hand the mic over to Provost Mary Clark to get us started.
All right, good morning. And I echo Chase in saying how exciting it is to see so many people with us this morning. So thank you for joining us. And thank you to our planning group. So Chase, thank you. And to our friends in Advancement and the Chancellor's office, thank you for all of your thoughtfulness. Well, this morning we're gathered to hear about a very important topic, one that is already impacting our lives and will continue to impact our lives moving forward. And I was just sharing with Maureen here, what I've been seeking to do as provost here at the University of Denver is to lean into AI for good. How is it that we can be supporting our students, our faculty, and our staff to be thinking about the opportunities of AI for good? Because as Maureen said, it's here and it's only going to be expanding further in the future. So how can we be affirmatively leaning into this space to be preparing our students for the workforce of today and the future, for our faculty, for the research that they're engaged with, our staff as well. And so we'll be hearing about that some today, both in Ms. Cheng's presentation and then also in our panel to follow. So I am extraordinarily happy and fortunate to be introducing Ms. Lili Cheng, who is she leads, the Emerging Technology Group in the Cloud and AI Division for Microsoft's business applications. She focuses on driving innovation and delivering AI-driven products and services. So we'll hear a lot about the foundation of AI and where AI is going in the future. Ms. Cheng is a member of the National Academy of Engineering and Computer Science. She has a rich history with Microsoft Research, founding the Social Computing Group and Futures Social Experiences, or FUSE Labs. Ms. Cheng has taught at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, NYU Tisch School of the Arts, Cornell University School of Architecture, Art, and Planning. And she will be presenting this morning again highlights of her work in this field and future envisioning for AI. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Cheng to the podium. And thank you.
Hi, everyone. So it's great to be here at DU. My son actually went here and I love it here. So, right? So yeah, my life since ChatGPT launched has just become very busy. And it's been really amazing. And I think, one of the things I think you should think about is really how can we best apply AI? How does it impact education? And just really the future of work, like how will it change work? I'm just going to give you kind of a brief overview and then really looking forward to the Q&A session. So about maybe 4 years ago, Microsoft started a partnership with OpenAI. And for those of you who don't know, OpenAI is the organization which created ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, how many people have tried it? Probably most people. Yeah. It does something that I think in computer science, we were really surprised to see. We kind of dreamed. My background, I do a lot of natural language and work in AI before ChatGPT. And I think we thought, wow, this is a huge breakthrough. Like I really have not seen in my career. And I've been at Microsoft since 1995, so that's a really long time. And so I just feel so lucky, like all of you, to be here at this moment, because I think things will definitely be different in 5 years. And they're definitely different than they were a year ago, especially coming out of COVID, where so much has already been changing. So for those of you who don't know, ChatGPT runs on our cloud on Azure, backed kind of by our database, so you don't have to really know all these terms, and was developed on GitHub and is the fastest growing consumer product in history. Not only was it the fastest product to kind of gain massive use, but one of the interesting things is it's built on open source technology, which means it really embraces people sharing code in technology. And one of the things I think that we saw was not just ChatGPT growing, but also so many of the code repositories in GitHub where people are sharing code also were growing really quickly. So what this means for you is just massive innovation, not just from ChatGPT and Microsoft, but the whole technical community is just building. And it seems like every day something new comes out. I think OpenAI is actually having a conference this week, so I'm sure they're also announcing lots of new things. But this growth has been really exciting for us to see, not just in our company, but in the whole ecosystem. So in 2018, I think maybe that was the last time I was here, we were working on AI, and we thought, what are the barriers for companies adopting AI? So my job, I deal with lots and lots of companies who are really thinking, what's their future and how do they embrace technology and AI? And we saw that there were some really interesting reasons why companies weren't adopting AI back in 2018. So the first reason was they had a lack of a strategy for AI. They weren't sure what they were doing. They weren't sure how it was really going to help their customers or their employees. And it was kind of scattershot across the organization. So maybe one group would do one thing and another group would do another thing, but it wasn't coordinated. And at that time, most companies did not have any kind of AI thought leadership group in their company. Maybe it was being led by some early adopters. The second thing was there was a lack of talent for AI. It was really hard to hire people with AI. I mean, it's hard for big tech companies to hire people with AI. So if you were looking, it was really hard to hire people with the right skills. And then again, things were very siloed. Each group was doing different things. And I will say that ChatGPT and these large language models really makes the bottom two things, lack of AI talent and siloed AI technology, go away, because most people are using the same big models, or these big models are shared. And basically the people who were most disrupted were people who had a lot of natural language expertise, because you didn't have to use their stuff. You could use this work from OpenAI. And again, I think the main challenge that most people still have is just the strategy for AI. So if you're concerned or worried or thinking about your strategy for AI, so is everyone else. ChatGPT just happened pretty much a year ago. So I think we are all learning and thinking, how does this really fundamentally impact society? So I'm just going to kind of go through an overview of what we do at Microsoft. So at Microsoft, we had started, before ChatGPT was actually our first project with OpenAI, to think about how AI could assist humans doing work. And we call that our Copilot. And the first Copilot that we made was for developers on GitHub to how can Copilot help you code? And so that has really sparked a whole, it's probably my favorite AI example, this GitHub Copilot. And I'll just show you like a little video of what it does. So like I said, we felt like we didn't want, as you were thinking about how does AI help society, and we really want to keep the person in the center. So what are the ways that AI can help people do their job more effectively and do more, and give them maybe more time to do different kinds of things? And if you have more time to do different kinds of things, what is it that you want to do? So GitHub Copilot, we've been it's been out for some years, and we've really been able to work with economists and also social scientists to understand how has it impacted the way people program. So about half of all code on GitHub today is AI assisted, which is huge because GitHub is very, very popular. But what's interesting is most developers who use it feel like it's making their work more satisfying. And they also feel like they're a lot better doing those repetitive tasks that they can do more easily. And we have some other stats that people who manage developers also feel like the developers are more productive. So you're feeling like the individuals doing work as well as their ecosystem. In general, people feel very confident with these new tools. So that's been great to see. And this is just kind of a little video of it. So basically, as you're programming, it can give you tips to say, if you ask, it can say like, hey, why don't you try this code? Or it can help you autocomplete things as you're typing and give you suggestions just in time. And so it's just kind of like your private tutor that's giving you personal information as you're doing your job, but you're still in control of what you're coding. The other good thing is if you're kind of a novice coder, it actually makes it a lot easier for you to get started. And we think that these developer tools should be even easier and easier for people to make. Ideally that you don't need to learn to code at all, but you can really start creating experiences with no code or low code just by talking and making that easier. And I'll show you some examples of that later. So in Microsoft, I'm in the business applications group. So we do things like tools for sales and marketing groups or customer service, supply chain, finance. I also run a group doing more emerging technologies, so the way that frontline workers are doing their job, and we focus on all these low-code tools that I was talking about. And from January of last year, I would say pretty every single group in our organization has been thinking about how AI can help, and pretty much every group at Microsoft. So one of the things I think that's been interesting for work, so much of your work happens in your communication tools, maybe email or Zoom or Teams. And in the past, it was really hard to connect this kind of very human, way of communicating with the way a computer kind of organizes things in very logical ways. And the beauty of focusing on language, these language technologies, helps us stitch this together. So for these kind of business applications, it's really important because in the past, nobody really likes to call a company and ask for help. It's kind of like the last thing you want to do. But why? Why is that not a great experience to call a company or it could interact with a company online? I mean, most people aren't actually walking into the storefront these days to ask for help. But in the past, the language that you might use as a customer talking to an employee just never gets cataloged into the system. So if one person has a problem, it's really hard to make everybody else with that problem be able to leverage that information. So like I said, at Microsoft, pretty much every product and every business that we work with has been thinking about how AI and this notion of co-pilots or how AI can assist either your employees or your workforce has been really is something that we've been working on a lot. And one of the products in my group is called the Power Virtual Agent. And what this does that you might want to check out is it actually helps you create your own co-pilot. So while it's really cool that Microsoft has GitHub Copilot and these co-pilots, we really feel like a lot of other companies either want to take the co-pilots that are in our product and extend them so that they really work with your private data and the tasks that you want to do, or you make your completely own co-pilot that you might put on your web page to interface with your audience, whether it be like your internal employees or your customers. And so I'll just show you a little video. This is a developer in my group. He's gonna just walk through just a short video of what that's like. And for this, you really don't need any coding experience at all. Our goal is that you can just give us a few URLs for things that is your information or connect to your data, and then you can start chatting over it in a very secure way. And then if you are a programmer or you want to add more logic, you can either do that through graphical tools, or you can go to code and you can kind of go back and forth. So let's see.
Hello.
Oops. He says more than hello, really. Let's see. Oops, go back. Oh, come on. Come on, Jeff. Okay.
Hello, my name is Jeff Durstead, and I'm an engineering director for Power Virtual Agents. Today I'm going to show you how to use new capabilities in PVA to allow bots to be instantly useful right out of the box with answering customer questions over a tenant's own corpus of public and internal data. In this example, I'm going to build a bot for Lowe's, a major home improvement store. I'm going to start with an empty bot with no manually authored conversational topics. Configure data sources for this bot. I can navigate to the bot's AI capabilities page. On the AI capabilities page, you can see that I have it configured to leverage data from a public website, Lowe's.com. However, I also want my bot to be able to have access to product manuals that are not on the public website. To do this, I can upload my documents right here from within PVA, so the bot has access to this content. Now let's see how this bot performs with only this configuration. First, I'm going to ask whether Lowe's carries a particular refrigerator that would meet my needs. Do you have a Series 800 Bosch Refreshment Center refrigerator? Now the bot's using those various data sources to formulate an answer. You can see that it comes back with content. Yes, we do have a particular refrigerator, and you can even find more information here. It provides a link. So we can see that this content came from Lowe's.com, a public website. So let's ask a follow-up question. How many bottles of wine can it hold? So again, it's going out using context from the conversation to try and find an answer to that question. It says, according to this page, which again comes from Lowe's.com, the Bosch 800 series refrigerator can hold up to 17 standard wine bottles or 35 standard beverage cans. Well, that's cool. Now let's ask it something really specific. Wow. What temperature will chill my white wine? So again, same thing, it's looking in those various data sources to see how it can answer the question. And this time, let's just kind of pay attention here first. We can see that the link it came back from isn't from Lowe's.com. In fact, this is one of those PDF documents that I uploaded, which is a product manual for this particular refrigerator. You can see that it was able to answer the question saying that it's going to chill the white wine at 46 degrees using the bottle storage compartment's white wine button. So pretty cool. And if I wanted, I can click on this document, and PVA will help proxy downloading that PDF for me so I can access it. So with PVA, you can easily build bots that answer questions based on a variety of content sources. So including public websites, documents you upload, but also things like internal SharePoint sites, as well as content from third-party services. You can even leverage the full power of Azure OpenAI's on your own data feature. And once your bot is answering questions, it's simple to connect your bot to websites, teams, and even IVR systems. Thank you.
All right. So I would say you can drill into this tool and go much, much deeper and add all kinds of integrations. But if you're thinking about, like every single person here can do this, you can go to a website, you can type in a URL, upload some documents, and just try asking questions over your private data and thinking about what kinds of things people might want to ask about that was hard to get to before. So it's a very simple way to get started. So one of the other things that we do is, in order to make it easy for people, anybody really, to start experimenting with these new AI technologies, is we have been spending a lot of time on the infrastructure for building that. And I'm just going to have a few slides. So in a way, this is kind of like a world's wonder, building the infrastructure, all the GPUs, think about, all the buildings and cooling and power and things like that for building a cloud. I advise you not to build your own cloud because it's a lot of work, but it's pretty cool to think about like what goes behind building these systems. So this is just like all the cabling just to connect things together. I mean, we still use cables, so AI hasn't really helped us. Like, I guess it could help us optimize these in the future, but we are spending a lot of time like just wiring things up old school and also building. So this is like at the size of a football field, but these are giant buildings. And this is just one, we have 60 or so regions around the world because we want to run this worldwide and also make sure it's secure. So it's pretty cool. And one of the things that I really love about our company is we are committed to being 100%, having 100% renewable energy supply by 2025. So this is like probably, one of the biggest power consuming, whatever projects in the world. And we really want to be carbon negative by 2030. So we're really pushing that, obviously with a lot of partnership too with the Gates Foundation and others. So like I said, all of our stuff runs on this infrastructure. It's the same technology that if you're creating your own Copilot, you run on it. So we're really sharing what we're doing internally with what people are building externally. I work on the things that are on, that side. So all the dynamics and power platform tools, the business applications, also a lot of things with Nuance, but there's lots of other groups around the company all thinking about how we in the company share learnings to make our products better and then share that out to everybody else building things. And basically, when you think about Copilot, you kind of have apps, which is, probably what most people will be building. Your apps can have AI in them. And then you also have this layer that's called orchestration. So you might hear that term. It's basically when you saw that example that I showed, when you ask a question, the AI has to think about, should I ask that question from the website or from those PDF docs, or maybe from data that I'm getting from another source, or should I execute some other program? So the orchestration of how you bring all this together is really important. And then underlying that are the foundational models, like the models that we use from ChatGPT, as well as Azure and all the infrastructure there. And then with that, one of the things that we really want is for lots and lots of companies and developers to be able to plug stuff in at different levels so other people can reuse your plugins. So let's say you are Lowe's and you have a plugin that lets people understand their equipment better. Maybe you could plug in that Copilot piece that you have so that other people could use it and reuse the information that you have. So then I guess the other question is, this is all great. I just gave you a bit of a tech talk, but really I think the question that we're here to answer is like, why? Like, why is it interesting? What applications can make society better? What might change? And I'll just give you a little taste of some things. Like one of the things that we think a lot about are desk workers, people who spend their time working behind desks, but there's probably more workers and people who do not sit behind desks. We call them frontline workers. And a lot of them really have not had very many tools, tech tools to help them. A lot of people are still paper and pencil. A lot of them are aging out. There's a lot of attrition in these jobs because they're very, physically demanding. So we've been thinking a little bit about how can some of these tools make all workers more productive, not just desk workers who definitely will become more productive. So this is just like a little video, I think, of, you can have your phone instead of being a camera pointing in at you, talking to other people like you might in a video conference, really pointing out and sharing what you're looking at in the world, either to get information or to share information with another person who can help you remotely. Okay, so this is a Copilot, kind of being your eyes looking out at the world, helping you if you're a factory worker or something, a new worker, understand the equipment that you're working on.
Vancouver. I'm Nick, Reality Copilot, and I'm here to help you with your issues.
Well, that's great. I know the S30 isn't receiving power right now, so I'm hoping you can help me fix it.
It looks like the issue with the X30 machine is related to the electric panel. According to service records, it appears that you need to replace the relay with the new R14-5A15-240 relay.
Okay, can you show me how to shut off the electrical panel?
To shut off the electrical panel, pull down the interlock power cutoff lever on the top right-hand side of the electric panel. Open the door and locate the R14-5A15-240 relay.
Is this the power cutoff?
For any occlusions, this will. Yes, the physical interlock power cutoff lever should be pulled down to shut off the electrical panel before inspection.
Okay, I've done that. What's next?
Once the old relay is removed, replace it with a new one from the on-hand inventory located to the right of the transformer. Then flip the interlock power cutoff lever back to the on position.
What does this piece right here do?
The relay is a consumable part that controls the flow of power.
Not that one, this one.
From outlets on the left.
It's a dev prototype, but
The transformer is a device that converts electrical energy from one voltage to another. It is highlighted on your display for further inspection.
Is the transformer UL rated? Is the transformer UL rated?
The transformer X259U is UL certified and has a UL file no E79416 and CSA file.
okay,
no.
so I'm gonna continue. But the thing I think that is really cool, so basically he's wearing lenses or using the phone to not just do text, but also use vision and the information that a frontline worker might know about the situation. So you probably have a work order list to show you the history of work on a machine. You might have call and support logs that you can pull in, as well as 3D models and information from the manufacturer about a device for what's there. So in this case, we're using the information in the CAD files that they have in their manuals to be able to map what parts are. But I love that demo because I think that it gives you an idea of what can happen in the physical world with voice and vision as AI starts to incorporate more forms of communication. But always the underlying model really is language and text. So, people probably text more on their phone than they share selfies. So it's, but the selfies are really important, I guess. But so I think it's important to connect all these ways that we're communicating and make it really easy for people to use the same systems, whether they're using, vision and imaging and speech, or they're just typing, because you want it kind of all to use the same system versus different AI systems. So I just have 2 more slides. This was my favorite project, well, maybe before some of this AI stuff that we ever did at Microsoft. We had the Xbox group, and we were really trying to figure out how we could get kids to be more inspired to learn how to create the kind of experiences that they were spending so much time playing. And so we created this project called Kodu, which basically let kids, through a graphical interface, create a game. And I always thought it was too hard to play. So I was always giving everybody such a hard time because I'm not a gamer. So just like using the remote is always hard for me. But I remember we had this session, and there's basically this big pile of ice cream and candy, and it was just melting as the kids were like all building their stuff. And there was this like 4-year-old girl sitting in her dad's lap, like making a game. And so this is from one of these sessions that we did, like in coding camps and things like that. But it really is a dream that I have, that that coding and creating these experiences can be a lot easier, that you don't have to be a programmer, because really the number of programmers in this world is not that large, and the number of people who have ideas about how this technology can be useful is good. And I think one of the things that we learned with the kids is if they just start, they didn't do very well because they would get stuck on a path and then we had to just ask them to spend like literally 1 minute and say, what kind of game do you want to make? What do you want to make? And they would think about it, and they would think about what they want to make and like, how would they do it? And then they could go. Literally, it took them a minute to think about what before just starting. So that was just a simple thing, I think, to think about as we're doing all this AI stuff. And the other thing that was really amazing is the teachers had a much harder time learning than the kids. And so I remember my kids were teaching kids to learn, and they were saying like, wow, it's so hard to teach those teachers. So I think it's because as we get older, we have a hard time being novices. We're used to being experts. And so in a way, kids have that curiosity that we have to like embrace again with AI. Like, it's fine to make mistakes. And I think that that's a really important thing as we're thinking, especially you all like in a university, that students don't expect us to be experts. And the truth is no one is an expert because this is all pretty new, right? I mean, I guess if you're an expert, if you've been working on it for more than a couple of years, but that's still a pretty short amount of time. And then this is just one of my favorite images. I think it's just really beautiful from DALL-E. You probably all know DALL-E. You can ask DALL-E to create you an image. And maybe the thing again that you have to think about is what kind of image would you want to be able to create? So I don't remember what the query here was, but it was something cool that just made a really beautiful image. So I think also people feel like they're not writers, they don't do technology, they don't code, they're not artists, they're not musicians. We kind of become brittle at a fairly early age, thinking that we don't do X. And I think we cut off a lot of our creativity. So I really hope that these tools like open up more people to feeling like they can be novice creators and create something beautiful, and maybe become experts, over time in these different areas. So just, leaving you with the thought, I think everything that we do will change. It would change even without AI, honestly, like it changed with COVID. And I just think there's so many new businesses that will be enabled by this, and so many businesses that will find themselves in a difficult time. And I couldn't be more thrilled to be here and just have this conversation with you to hear, what are you thinking about and what are your challenges? So thank you.
Another round of applause for Lili, because that was amazing. Awesome. Well, we will take a short bio break. The restrooms are right out here. If you need to grab food and beverages, they're right there. We'll come back in about 3 to 5 minutes, somewhere in there. And then we will hear from Lili along with the Chancellor and some wonderful other panelists. And so please do come back and help yourself if you have any questions on here about the building or the space. Thank you again, Lili. Very excited to have the next part of our series here. We are going to be having a moderated conversation at the front here. Again, thank you so much to our folks that have joined us for the conversation. Very excited and honored the Chancellor was able to join us. And I will hand the mic to Provost Clark to do introductions and really get to know what we're trying to do here with these conversations.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chase. And a round of applause to Chase for having organized this morning's activity. So we're very fortunate to have Chase as our senior project manager for so many of these community engagements. Last year was around blockchain, and before that, it was around gaming, technology, and otherwise. So thank you to Chase. So now we're going to turn to our panel and then our interactive Q&A session. And we are very honored to have our Chancellor, Jeremy Haefner, as the moderator, facilitator of our panel. And naturally seated next to the Chancellor is Ms. Cheng. And again, thank you. And she and I were just having a table talk about the future of AI. And I'm just so pleased and honored to be able to pick your brain about this. Next to Ms. Cheng is Russell Kaurloto, who is our Vice Chancellor for Information Technology. here at DU. And next to Russ is Vivek Choudhury, our Dean of the Daniels College of Business, who is an information systems expert by background and has been leaning into AI for the public good. And so I'm looking forward to this morning's conversation. And I do understand some of the questions or discussion topics were AI generated, as they should be, and then a human element integrated into that. So I will sit back and enjoy the conversation, and do be thinking, as Chase invited, do be thinking about questions for the Q&A session. So thank you again for joining us.
All right, well, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Chase, for all the wonderful work you did to it. And thank you all for joining us. This is fabulous to see 340 filled to the brim with your interests around artificial intelligence. Lili Cheng, it is so great to have you back on the DU campus. Some of you may remember that back in 2018, we invited Lili to come and plant the seed about artificial intelligence. We knew that she played a pivotal role at the Microsoft Corporation, or at that time. So she addressed a very large crowd of interested faculty from all corners of the university to talk about AI and to kind of spark our attention around that. So it's like a reunion, and you are definitely part of the family. I had an opportunity to visit her maybe 6 months ago, I think it was, in the Washington campus there. And the electricity that was in that room was palpable in that building, as a matter of fact. And I remember, Lili, you described a little bit of the events that led up to the release of ChatGPT, and I thought I'd just share it with the crowd. But what she shared was a few months before it was released, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, basically called together all the leadership in a pretty much a big hands-on kind of around, and said, I'm going to paraphrase and you keep me honest here, drop everything else that you're doing, any project that you're doing. If it isn't about AI, it's not about where Microsoft is headed. I found that fascinating. I found that inspiring and a little bit electrifying. And I found it a little worrisome to me, thinking about, well, what are we doing here at the University of Denver to prepare for this incredible innovation that has changed us? So I guess, Lili, let me start by simply asking you how that has come to be at Microsoft, but also if you could share kind of some specific examples, maybe from Microsoft or maybe out there in the industry, where AI has not only optimized processes, kind of like you gave us a hint to, but really driven innovation and the competitive advantage that we think it's going to do out there.
Yeah, it's definitely been a very busy year, and it's been awesome in a way. I've been at Microsoft for a long time, and I think one of our challenges in the past was we had innovation, but it was happening kind of all over the place. And probably the biggest difference is we're all innovating in the same direction. And of course, we're doing a lot of things that aren't, AI says, but I think that that's been like, it feels great to be in the company because the company feels smaller because everybody's reusing each other's stuff a lot more. So the low-code tools that we're using for external folks, people are saying, well, how do we use that to customize all of our co-pilots? Or if you're working with this company, how do we work with this company? So in a way, by having like one charter for innovation and sharing this underlying technology, it makes your world a little bit smaller. And we focus a lot on how do we reuse each other's stuff. I mean, that would be something that I would definitely think about here. Like how maybe before, I think in 2018, it felt like the English department was really far away from the computer science department and the history department. And, people were all teaching, but not thinking about what is it that we're doing together to make the student experience better. And you probably do better here than in most universities. So maybe just one other comment is I think that it's easy to focus a lot on the technology and the, the negative side of AI. But I would think like, if I was you, I'd say like, okay, if we were to do 2 projects in the school, like do the simplest thing possible. How quickly could we try that? And how could we have people just use it? Does it actually help? Like just get started. And I think that was the biggest thing for Microsoft. Like Satya was kind of like, no excuses, like just get started. We have this small company outside who's done this amazing work. Like none of you have any excuse for not like just jumping in, was more what he was saying than, it's like, what's your excuse? You're too busy? Like, well, sorry, that's not an excuse. Like, at least you should be using it if you're not using it, and then try to do something with it and think about how that affects your business.
Well, wow, that's a challenge for us there, right there and then there. How no excuses for us. I like that model. What I heard from you was at Microsoft now, you're kind of all pulling in the same direction, which is really wonderful. I think that is a huge competitive advantage that this tool has really enabled in so many different ways. So thank you for that. That's really great. All right, I'm gonna turn to Vivek now, because as Mary initiated, really thinking about artificial intelligence for the good. I wore my special shoes just for this question here. It says, be a good human. So, the framing of this question is, can AI be a good partner with a good human here? But more specifically, how can we strike a balance between harnessing AI's potential for the public good, but also making sure that it is developed and deployed in an ethical manner? And I know you're really focused on that in your
we needed AI to coordinate these mics, but well, thank you, Jeremy. Let me start as I share my comments by saying, it's not a question when we talk about the challenges of ethical AI that anyone is suggesting that we hold back AI. The horse has left the barn, right? I mean, it's out there, it's going to do good. The potential is absolutely enormous. And an example that some of you may have heard me share very casually is, if you think about something as simple as driverless cars, if you are an older person, if you're a person with limited vision, driverless cars can transform your life. But if you are one of the 700,000 truck drivers that make your living driving a vehicle, it may transform your life not so positively. So really, whenever you have any technology that's introduced, the potential is for good, but also for displacement. And the responsibility that we as stewards of the technology have is to ask ourselves the question, what do we need to think about? So when I think about the ethical issues related to AI, I divide them into 3 different categories. The first one is an easy one to think about, not so easy to address and enforce. These are the people that are deliberately using AI for harm. Think about deep fakes, people putting voices and images out there, whether it's politicians or whether it's exploitative videos, an article today about teens. These are people that are deliberately doing harm. Right? So the challenge there, of course, is how do we detect, how do we prevent, and how do we enforce any rules that we have to develop around that? But that's, in some sense, something we understand fairly easily. There's bad intentions, we need to counter those. The second one, I think, has gotten a lot of publicity in the popular press, which is we are developing AI systems that have biased data. And if the data that's being used to develop and program AI is biased, the results will be biased, right? If we are going to have those kinds of issues, the privacy issues, those are issues that developers like Microsoft are very aware of, and they can be addressed and they can be thought about, is to say, how is it pure or how good is the data that we're providing to AI? And so that's something that, again, I think it's a challenge. We've talked a lot about it in the press, but at least it has a somewhat identifiable, in my mind, solution. The third one is what I call sort of AI that is doing good, but for whom? So, a simple example that I just gave you of the driverless vehicle is one of them. But let's take examples that are close to the heart of some of the people in this room, perhaps. And I apologize for any discipline that I pick on. It's only for example. I'm not suggesting anything. But if you happen to be in the auditing profession, which is there are people in my college that obviously do that, and if the solution is that the most optimal way to audit a company's financial accounts is through AI, and 90% of beginning auditors will therefore have either no job or a different job, is that a good thing or a bad thing? We obviously want to optimize the profession, but who's thinking about the 90% that have to find ways to do things differently, right? So those are the kinds of issues. Think about legal research. If you are in a world where the basic legal research will no longer be done perhaps by a first-year law graduate, but by AI, clearly the $500 to $800 an hour that you might be paying someone to do legal research, you could save. But are we doing this just for the premier law firms in New York City and DC? Or are we democratizing access to the legal profession so that all of us have access to the best legal advice that we can get? So these are the kinds of questions and these are the kinds of ethical challenges that I think we need to think about, where I think if we come to the right answer, the potential for AI to solve some of our most wicked problems is tremendous. But the dangers are there, and we just need to navigate them.
Thank you, Vivek. I'm going to build off of your bad actor sort of example there. You talked about deep fakes, and there's all kinds of stories now emerging, even in K through 12 now, how it's being exploited there in not so good ways. Let's just put it that way. But I'm going to turn to Russ because as Vice Chancellor for Information Technology, one of your biggest responsibilities is protecting data and protecting the university from cyber threats here. So I know you're worried a bit about how bad actors are going to use this tool to really make inroads in the cybersecurity of our information and data. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I'm a bit schizophrenic on this, in that because on one side of it, we want to be able to promote AI, right? I mean, one of the statistics that came out most recently, those who actually then responded accordingly, 43% of students are using AI regularly on a daily basis. And that's those who actually responded. So we know that the percentages are higher than that, right? That's one aspect of it. The other part of it, that flip side, okay, what do we need to do on the IT front to be able to get ahead of it, be able to then support it, enable it in different manners, and back to ethics as well. But on the security front, that's the scary part, because of the fact that the engineering aspect of it, the social engineering, the deep fake aspect of it, we've done a really good job at the university when email phishing, as an example, the lowest hanging. All of a sudden you look and you say, okay, that URL has this little weird thing, and it's actually not part of DU. Well, we know this is not legitimate. Well, now with that deep fake, it's now at the point where you just don't know. And it's going to get even worse as time goes on. So working with the cybersecurity front and making sure that our folks within cybersecurity are ahead of the curve on this. This means that there's vendors that are out there, including Microsoft and the A5 stack, making sure that they're actually looking at ways to be able to mitigate those aspects of things. And that's at the lowest common level. You start getting into the deeper aspects of it, even into the bit level of information going back and forth. It's going to even get harder and harder to know whether or not something is nefarious or not. One of the things we look at as well, how that then occurs, usually ends up, we have, the whole aspect, you've got these threat actors that are out there, but also integrating and then embedding themselves into those software companies that you actually have purchased as part of the solution itself. We all know about, and back in the day, SolarWinds was one that was really one of the biggest. Now think about that fast forwarding with an AI component embedded in there and breaking into it, we could be using technologies to safeguard ourselves, not knowing that there's an AI piece that basically was inserted in this. It's now basically capturing or stealing that information. So we're basically looking at this in different multiple ways. That means even on the procurement front, what new policies and procedures do we need on the general counsel side of things for limitation of liability? How do we then scrutinize and making sure that when we basically adopt a new technology, that we're actually answering those questions about AI embeddedness? Because as Lily brought up, every single company out there now has AI built into their component, what they're offering as a service. But that's also that's that back and forth. So we're trying our best to stay ahead of the curve. That means we're looking at new companies that are out there that are evolving, traditional companies and what they're doing to be able to safeguard it and continuing to build against that. You know, one of the things that's one of the biggest challenges for us is that it's an arms race. We don't have the capability of some of the others, the top, 100, 500 corp that are out there, where they can hire more and more individuals to be able to put more within this. What most are saying within the industry is that we now need to look at AI to protect ourselves against AI. And they're now testing that out as we speak, that AI can now detect that something that just occurred was an AI piece, not something that was a physical one or someone that came up on their own from a coding standpoint. So I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Russ. So Russ, I've asked you to create a task force across the university to really look at all the different opportunities that the university could use AI to deploy, whether it's in the academics or in the business end of the university. You mentioned 43% of our students in general are using AI. It probably is much higher than that. I remember when the ChatGPT first came out, there was all kind of some ringing that was going on about, well, do we try to clamp down on AI? Do we try to restrict its use? And in an open environment like a university, we knew that wasn't going to be possible. And so the future is really helping faculty, I think about ways that they can leverage AI and really accelerate some of those learning opportunities of our students. But just looking at your role now, very broadly, looking across the university, whether it's academics or it's in the business end, what do you find really right now most exciting, most optimistic in terms of it's changing how we do business in higher education?
And thank you for bringing that up, Jeremy. I think one of the key things specific to DU itself, and I come from some big R1s prior, we have an opportunity at DU because of the size that we are and the agility that we can actually then leverage using AI really could be a level set for us against some of those top within our peers, even within those top R1s. If you really think about it, some of the things that I went to EDUCAUSE recently, and I went to every single AI and it was a topic of discussion. Remind me back at date myself, the .com days. It was a buzz. Everybody's talking about it. But thinking about it from literature-based development, right? Literature-based discovery aspects of it. Natural language processing, right? Research within that realm. Being able to then on the biochemistry side to be able to leverage AI to pull down and look at compounds in a different way and have the information readily available, not taking weeks, but hours, changing the whole dynamic. But then reeling that back, there's just, that's at a high level, start reeling it back. What we need to be able to have is that base infrastructure around it, making sure that we're given the capability and the enablement of AI in a way that's useful. What does that mean? So that we have ChatGPT, OpenAI through Microsoft for the entire campus, for faculty, staff, and students, but also have a structure and around what that task force that Jeremy's talking about, making sure that we have the guardrails around it. We know that everyone in this room is using it on a regular basis. How many of you right now are paying for OpenAI? Right? You're doing it either on your own or another way around it, right? Then there's also other aspects of it. How many of you are familiar with PDF Gear? Anyone? You can take a PDF. You can basically go to PDF PDF gear, you could literally take a PDF and drop it in, and it will do almost like it's the modern day version of Cliff Notes. It summarizes everything within that PDF. So I could take a research paper, drop it in, and it'll give me a synopsis and summary of what was going on, right? Is that good or is that bad? But in that way, basically for those who need to go through multiple reads, it could then accelerate what you're doing within that research component, right? On the student side of it, it's one of where leveraging it in a way of which then they can make it used for critical thinking. We don't think of it in those terms, but most are now looking at AI as to spur greater thought, greater critical thinking, and pulling that back because of the fact that they weren't thinking about different aspects of it, but they can pull it down within an AI and say, oh, I like what this is about, and extract that back out, right? Now, so what some of the universities are doing, specifically University of Michigan, way ahead of the curve. They're actually using, similar to like Copilot, they're calling it Maisie. They're now taking it basically for faculty. You basically now can take that and embed it and it's bolt on into Canvas. Now you could take everything in Canvas or in OneDrive, pull it all together and index everything within minutes. Instead of having to go through it, you know, as you're building out your curriculum and your syllabus and all the work that you need to do, all of a sudden it optimizes what we're doing at the university, and you as an individual on the faculty side of how you can actually get away from that mundane task that you really, then you can actually focus on the teaching and learning and that whole dynamic shift. This is where we really are, where we are right now. I really believe that IT has from my role in that big picture, we need to then make sure that we have the support underneath of it. Actually understanding what use cases can you develop? What are the good and bad of it? What do we have available? The training sessions that go with it for faculty, but also for our students as well, and adopting it in a way that enables it. And then on the flip side, on the ethics aspects of it, where are the guardrails? Making sure that on the student affairs front of this thing that you understand, here's how you leverage it, but not use it in a way of which then is a detriment, or you're taking advantage of it in a way of which then plagiarism in that aspect starts to come into play. So that now you think about it, the whole aspect of that multidisciplinary aspect of this is really big. It's going to take a lot of individuals. When Jeremy talks about that task force, we're talking about research. We're talking about everyone within student and student advisory. We're now talking about everything on the administrative front as well. So it's crossing all of those areas for the first time, one technology. And we need to make sure that we're actually looking at it from that big picture and then narrowing it down for its effectiveness in those specific areas.
All right, Russ, thanks. That was, you know, quite an overarching umbrella of how you're looking at AI in the higher education space, and that EDUCAUSE conference, I'm sure, was super helpful in all of that. I was going to ask a question on the student experience, but I think you kind of covered it. One of the things that I think we can really seriously think about it is how we can help students navigate the complexities of the university, particularly like first generation students that typically find higher education very, very, very complex and don't even know where to start. We just launched a new 4-dimensional experience app that curates experiences for students. I think that's a great application of AI to help them tie what the interests are of the students with the experiences that are out there. But let's circle back to research. So this is for all three of us, all three of you, actually, I should say. Lili talked about how much AI, this platform, is changing how Microsoft works. And I think one of the holy grails that we have in higher education is a deep collaboration between the industry and the business world and academia. I think there's a lot that we can continue to leverage here. So, you know, as we think about the governance of AI, what, you know, Vivek, Russ, Lili, what do you see as the next steps where we really are going to leverage our R1 status and connect with our industries in an interesting way? What's possible there now that we see this tool and how amazing it is for the connections between academia and industry?
So I haven't honestly been traveling that much since COVID. This is the first school that I've been in since pre-COVID. And I do think you have a very unique place because of the way your departments work together and the size and kind of the heart maybe of the school that you have. It's very unique. And, I think Satya has been on a cultural change mission in the company that he started a long time ago. And I just want to throw an idea out. So one of the first things he did when he became CEO is we used to have this giant company meeting in the baseball stadium. And he was like, okay, I'm canceling that. And instead, we're going to do a giant hackathon. And basically, we're going to spend that time making stuff. Anybody in the company can make their idea. And we basically had people reviewing these projects, the best selected projects, they kind of network it out, get to meet with Satya and show their work, and they get funded. Some of them get funded for becoming projects. And it's just creating this doer culture of you are empowered to make something, and you're challenged to have an idea that you really think will make a difference. And so people make these little videos and they make stuff. I would take it a step further with the AI. It's okay, and of those ideas, what gets used the most? What do people actually use that has impacted people in some way? But I think those kinds of things can really catalyze a place to kind of just lean in more, to be more active, and maybe we will have a lifetime full of discussion. We have a huge security group, but make something with security then. What would you do? Because honestly, people are not, if you think about social media, the belief that vaccines don't exist or something that has nothing. I'm sure there's AI involved, but really I'm surprised of how fooled people have been for things that I'm shocked actually. So I think AI will continue to surprise us, but I think some sort of thing to really bring energy would be great. And if you do that, then I'd be happy to look at projects or think about how we could amplify those and do that. So yeah, I would love to see that here because I think the students have ideas.
Yeah.
And it can just be 2 days. It doesn't have to be that long.
And we could introduce those co-pilot tools that you just demoed in your video as kind of the basis for how maybe people would get started, and then no excuses, right? Russ, Vivek, what would you add in terms of this research collaboration?
So what some doing out there, and I think it's something that's to be appropriate for us as well, and that's that, this is cross disciplines, but to create almost like a research lab for AI itself. I think that would be really appropriate. You talk about the hackathon piece, immediately to my mind, I thought, wow, that's a great idea to do that against the 4D. To do a hackathon of what AI would look like against it and be able to then develop that out, right, as a use case. But I think that really a key component within the research realm is look at the different multiple disciplinary aspects within research and create a lab environment so that individuals that are doing research have a place to go with their peers and say, here's what I'm thinking, and actually with like minds being able to develop and push that forward. I think that would be a great opportunity as an example. And I think that's really where we're headed. I think others are doing it along the same ways. And I think this really levels the playing field for us in that competitive aspects. And then also the whole aspect of what could come out of it and that we're not thinking about, right? Those opportunities around being able to leverage AI in a way we never thought possible, of being able to do really deep research in a way that would take us years to get there, maybe able to do it in months instead.
So obviously there's a lot of technical stuff that could be done in AI collaboratively, but I'm going to focus on the business aspect of it. And as you might imagine, every business is looking at it, but they're all probably looking at it with a very restricted lens. There's an idea that has come up from one person and they're going to be following that, right? One of the things that we in academia can do, which I think would be very powerful, is to convene people, is to create conversation and to create dialogue, is to say, okay, there's 800 of you in the financial services industry that are all looking at different little sides of the elephant, if you will, on how this industry can change. No one is looking at the broader picture. We as academia can bring you together in meaningful ways, create white papers, create research models, create new ways of thinking, and then generalize from that is to say, here are the 5 different models of how the financial services industry can change. Here are the ways that you can think about being more efficient, being more effective, being more accessible, being more ethical, being more dedicated to the public good. What do those things look like? So instead of just concentrating on solving individual problems, how do we as academics come together and say, there is a broader world that we can generalize to? And personally, I'm intrigued by the idea of getting some of these people together in a room and having conversations that they may never have had because they think of each other as competition, but maybe it's cooperation, it's not competition. And maybe we think about bringing them together in meaningful ways.
All right, and we're about to turn to a Q&A here just a moment, but I'll tell you a little story. I was talking to a former provost, and she had a really wonderful idea for the university to consider, because she knew this tsunami of AI was going to change. Think about the disciplines that we have. And of course, we attract world-class scholars, teacher scholars who love to teach. But what if in those disciplines, we also hired someone who was really adept at AI? How would that change the discipline at its very core, right? The thinking about, say, the social sciences, where we're very, very strong right now at the University of Denver. How could AI change the way faculty do research in that particular domain? I found that actually very creative, very thoughtful. And the person that was the former provost that I was talking to was Condoleezza Rice. That's just an example of how AI and higher education crops around on just about every conversation that we have in some interesting ways. I want to thank the panel, but we're going to turn to Q&A, right, Chase?
All right, so for accessibility, we want to ensure that we get the questions on the microphone. And then also we're recording today, so it'll be shared on YouTube later. So I will repeat the questions that folks have, but I loved having a packed house where I can't get to everybody with a microphone. But does anybody have a question to kick us off? Yes, and feel free to go ahead and ask, and then I'll just repeat the question.
This is a case study. So today it sounds like with autopilot or co-pilot, if I'm saying a management,
I'm so sorry. I'm going to go ahead and give you the mic because this is beautiful.
In what world do you think is going to be a short question? So hypothetically, I'm an MBA student. I'm taking a management class using a co-pilot. I just upload everything from the Canvas shell, right? Now I'm like a sophisticated student. I've got all this material at hand. It can answer questions. But even better, I want to upload the entire MBA program into Copilot. So I basically have at my hands everything possible, all the great answers that could be given. 2 questions for you. First of all, who owns that content? What are the IP issues? And the second thing is, how do you change curriculum in a world where I don't need to sit there and listen to everything? I can actually have a co-scholar with me all the time.
I can take a pass. So one of the coolest examples that I saw a while ago was by this guy named David Kellerman in Sydney, University in Sydney. And basically he thought, what happens when all my coursework is online? And like, how can we make that a better experience for students? So they basically have all of the curriculum online, and they let students, they try to encourage students to ask questions about the curriculum. Because even if you have it all, you're still gonna have questions, but to ask in the shared environment. And then they basically send that question to their TA, and they wait 5 minutes. So they are trying to encourage other students to answer questions. This is a little bit long, okay, but so basically they had this, once everything went online, they had this outpouring of questions, which was like, oh no, now we created this problem for professors because they have too many questions to answer. And if you don't answer the questions quickly, you basically train students not to ask questions. He's teaching a very large engineering class. So he created this system which encouraged students to ask each other questions and always ensure that any question asked would be answered within 5 minutes. And that really changed the dynamic of the class, because I don't think it's really about just being able to do that by yourself. I mean, I think if students had all the information, they probably wouldn't even ask questions unless it was on the test, which is not your goal. The university should own the information for what you're saying, but I think I'm trying to get at, like, okay, if you have all this information, how do you actually encourage students to learn? And I think the way you learn is by encouraging students to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you're afraid, or you don't care and you don't listen. So like, how do you create systems of engagement where people are encouraged to learn? And then they basically take those QA pairs and they create custom models for each student, and they can predict who will fail a class. It's typically the students who aren't engaged at all, who haven't been to class, you know these, and they can, what the professor does is for students who he thinks are going to fail, he personally reaches out to them and says, hey, you're probably going to fail this class. You can drop it before the add drop date, so it won't be like a failing grade on your transcript, or we can really work with you to get tutoring so that you can do better. You have to make that choice. And so that, I think, is just a beautiful story of using AI to give personalized information, having a person in the loop at the right moment. And overall, I think the students, 100% of them felt engaged. And so they actually are taking that model for like CS 100 or some bio class that tends to be giant in their university, and applying it to all the other large science classes. But I think those are the kind of things to think about. And this is pre-OpenAI. I mean, they're things that you can really start to think about now, I think.
Well, let me start with a couple of premises. Everything we teach in business school is online, okay? There is nothing that we teach that's secret. Let me start with the second premise. We said 43% of students use AI. That number should be 100%, because every single one of our business school students, at least, and I figure every DU student, is going to graduate into a world where they will be expected to be intelligent, smart users of AI. So our challenge is the dual challenge, which is we have to make them smart users of AI. If they go work for a consulting company, the consulting company will expect them to say, all of the stuff you need is online, figure out how to use it efficiently. It's better that they learn it now, because otherwise they're at a competitive disadvantage. But here's the trick. If every student could do that themselves, we would have been out of business many years ago. So there is something about building foundational understanding of material so that you can be an intelligent user of AI. This morning, there was an article in the New York Times that said chatbots hallucinate between 3 and 27% of the time. Well, it's nice if it's 3%, if it's 10%, if you don't have a foundational understanding of the subject matter, you don't know when to question whether it's hallucinating, right? So I think the challenge for us as educators is to say, it's not about regurgitating knowledge. It's about saying, how do I create a foundational understanding of this material so that you truly know what you're doing? And then, by all means, use AI to be more efficient. And then we're going to force you to go up Bloom's taxonomy and say, how do you analyze? How do you integrate? How do you personalize? How do you contextualize in a meaningful way, right? I mean, it's very simple. If 80% of students are using ChatGPT to write their cover letters for their job searches, And there is an AI engine on the other hand that knows that you use ChatGPT and did not bother to personalize, how quickly do you think they're going to be eliminated if they have not taken the trouble to make it personal? So I think we have to use AI. We have to teach students to use AI. I would envision a world where we require every student at DU to say, you must develop at least one co-pilot before you graduate. Perhaps in your personal space, perhaps in your professional space. Perhaps we force students to say, I know you're an engineering student, but I'd like you to develop a co-pilot to create an artistic piece of work that you have to get through some screening before you leave DU, because that's the world our students are going to be in. They're going to need to solve problems using AI in domains that are not in their comfort zone. And the more we prepare them for that, the more successful they're going to be in the long run.
Yes, I saw. I'm going to work my way backwards here. And speaking of pivoting, I'm just going to let folks ask their questions because I'm not going to do it justice.
Two things I'm really interested in, I've been thinking about a lot with regard to the development of ChatGPT and beyond, is the idea of data sovereignty and data responsibility. I think this is a great place for that kind of conversation. And I began thinking about this, I'll keep it short, about a month ago, as I was trying to develop an assignment that would involve using some transformer models and a data set I just discovered, which was just uploaded but not publicized. And those were the personal narratives associated with the Nuremberg trials. And I began thinking about this. Who makes this information available for public use? How do we bring it into a classroom in a way that's responsible? And how do we slow down enough as everybody's speeding up to accomplish, I think, some of the adjustments that you're describing? I like the idea of working across the university, having teams working together, and I can't wait to invite the humanities into this conversation. But I'll kind of leave part of that as a question.
I love the idea of bringing all the different disciplines together. I was just at a party and this designer was there. I love design, and somehow he's in the group that's doing legal compliance. So if you are on email retention, there's like a human that basically reads your email for 10 years looking for things, and it's kind of a horrible job. And he was saying he just made a co-pilot that would do that for his own job to make it easier to design these tools. And I thought that was so cool. Like, he's not a programmer, he just made something. And then he was telling me that he was so excited because he showed he did it for this hackathon, and he got a developer that could help him, so he's thrilled. I mean, developers not in that group wouldn't think of that project because that's not their job. And that's why I think, I'm kind of jealous of you guys, actually. You have this cool thing where you have so many students. They're the ones who are going to think of these ideas. It's not us, probably. And so I think the more you can bring in more disciplines, you just get more ideas. And you could imagine also, you have some ideas that you've picked as either being controversial or fantastic or whatever, and then you could talk about them and present them and debate why, but you're talking about specific things. But it's just really cool that you're already doing that. I love that you're thinking about bringing in these data sets that weren't accessible before, and how does that change debate? It's just, there aren't that many universities that I see today that are really thinking about AI and how it changes education across the community. You can be that school that is really thinking about that, and it will just make your students better. But I think you could really put yourself on the map, because like I said, I don't think many universities are having groups like this.
So one of the things I think you're leaning into more than anything else, and we talked about the whole cross-discipline aspect of it, but using the Nuremberg trials as the example, right? All of a sudden you find this data set. It's going to come back to citations, right? What is the credibility of the information itself? They're already having conversations right now around AI, APA, basically AI style, and making sure that the credibility around it and the citations are accurate. making that aspect of it and changing that paradigm. And that's something that we need to look at as well as we're going down that path. So as we're basically pulling in that data, it comes back to it. And I think Jeremy touched on it as well, something I've been thinking about, and that is, in the past, it's always been, most universities have a chief data officer, right? It's usually out of institutional research, and that basically maintains that aspect of different sets of data and how we're going to make access to it and the resource aspect of it. I think we're now at that point where it could become that chief AI data officer, or that group of which then helps with exactly what you have a place to go and say, I found this data set. Is this something that I can actually leverage and use and bring this in, so you have that check and balance? That's that basically the walls we need to put around it. Not really heavy, but at least a structure around what we're doing. So there's an understanding that it's not just a free for all of gathering that information. Does that help?
I'll simply add, though, I really applaud the idea of bringing the humanities into this conversation. From my world, from Mary's world, we know that the humanities are often attacked in this environment where higher education is about a private good. It's about getting jobs, and what jobs are the best ones to get? Well, in engineering, computer science often come to play. So we're constantly needing to explain the real value of the humanities, that deeper thinking, that critical thinking, the communication skills, the analysis skills that are embedded in the humanities. Layering on an AI as part of the learning experience of students, I think, is a powerful way to not only bring forth those critical thinking skills, those skills that are so important for someone who majors in the humanities and then goes on with a career where they're very successful because they're using those skills. But now they have something else to talk about, right? Their exposure to the AI tool and how they can use that continually in their career. So I think that's a great point that you're doing. And I know Mary wants to lean in on this too.
I do. Thanks to you all, I have this idea that start of winter quarter, we should host a hackathon, the group of us, and require that folks who enter the hackathon be across disciplines. So I'll look forward to doing that start of January.
Vivek came up with something he mentioned to me while we were talking. Want to bring that up about the humanities? Especially from the business school.
Well, I mean, obviously the field of digital humanities is getting a lot of attention recently, but from my perspective in the business school, and so I apologize for those of you who heard me talk about this many times, one of the things I said when I first got here was, we have a dual challenge. I need to get students ready to get that first job that they want to do, but we also need to get them ready to do that job 10 years from now that doesn't even exist yet. And I think where that training really comes into play is the humanities. It's all about problem solving, thinking, critical thinking. And if I had my druthers, every student would be forced to engage in problem solving in domains, like I said, that are not business, where they would be basically forced to go into something that says, this is about the Nuremberg trials. I know you may or may not have read about this, but here's a problem. How would you solve it, whether with or without AI? And I think the more we force students to engage in that kind of thinking, the more they're going to be ready for the world that they're going to inherit. Because let's face it, we don't know in 10 years what the world of finance or accounting or marketing or HR is going to look like. Are we still going to be paid to develop a digital marketing plan just like we do today? Or is that going to be automated? Or we're going to have a whole different challenge in how that world works. So the only skill that I know that is not ever going to go out of style is problem solving. As a former dean of mine at a different institution, we used to joke one time, we were walking out one day and she said, Vivek, what do we do all day? And I said, well, we're GPSs. And she said, what do you mean we're GPSs? I said, we're general problem solvers, right? And most of the world, if you talk to people who, especially who moved up in their career, 80% of their time, I'm sure this is true with Jeremy, is someone knocking on his door and say, Jeremy, what are we going to do about this? right? And you have to solve a problem that may not be in your comfort zone. So I think the humanities to me is an absolutely integral part of how we want to train every student.
And maybe, Vivek, we don't actually have to force students. Maybe we can think about inviting them into the conversation.
No, that's a better word.
And the last part of it is that something I've been thinking really hard on, and that is the job market, specifically coming out of looking at it a narrow lens from IT. The job workforce as we see it today will not exist the same way 10 years from now. It's going to dynamically change. And it's going to be in a lot of different areas. Decision-making processes, all of those are going to completely be dismantled and go in different directions. We're going to lose jobs in certain areas, but we're going to gain in others that we have not even thought about. And this is something of which then as a university, we need to make sure we've got our eye on those changes, because there's going to be an expectation of those students coming in that we are prepared to get them ready for what that new world's going to look like.
You guys are so lucky because you have, these folks. I mean, I'm just kind of blown away. You're saying, okay, well, let's just do something. I mean, how many schools can do that? Not very many. So that's amazing. Yeah, and also I would just say, I think universities had the hardest time during COVID. Maybe that in like elementary schools, they probably have one up on you, and you did it, right? The number of people that I've met just this morning who are new the year before COVID, during COVID, that's incredible to me. And I think that probably was harder than maybe this AI thing that we're going to have over the next couple of years. I mean, COVID was such a unbelievable, thing for students who were here at that time, especially if you're a freshman or you're a new teacher and you're coming into here. So, you could do it. I think this will be small in comparison to the amount of change that was forced on a university in a very short time during COVID. And people are ready for change because they just, had to deal with all that. So.
Hi, thank you. This question is more about the implementation aspect. So sort of the big elephant in the room is these GPUs cost a lot of money to run. And so it definitely takes a good amount of funding to implement an AI solution at a place like DU. I'm part of the implementation team with Marcelo, and we see it as a security issue almost, the possibility that data can leak through ChatGPT and be trained on HIPAA, FERPA data. So we've talked with DU's general counsel about that. And one thing that we're hearing is that because the money has already been allocated for next fiscal year, we might not have anything until July to pay for this. Do we have a plan as an institution to adapt AI quickly enough and fund it so that we don't have people sort of using it around the side?
I don't know exactly what you're doing. I'll be happy to talk to you after, but I would not host my own model because you don't really need to. I think also I wouldn't, it confused people a little bit. So ChatGPT is built on Azure and they have their own, we call instance, where they decide if you use ChatGPT on the web, just, typing in questions, they have decided that whatever you type in will make ChatGPT, the engine, smarter. So they will use that data. But you can also build your own instance of using the same tools in Azure where you decide your reuse policy and whether or not the data is public. So most companies who do that say, we're not going to put every question that our customers ask into the big model. We're going to keep that private, and our data's private. I mean, you have students, you can't make their data public to the world. So you decide in Azure your policies for your use of the technology. ChatGPT uses the same technology that you would use, but they have decided to make it public. So I could talk to you a little bit more. And even for us in our own stuff, I don't host my own model. That would be way too expensive. Then the services would be enormously expensive. So we fine tune the model or we build on top of it. And it's actually reduced the number of AI experts that we need because we don't need them to do that. We're just using those services just like you would use. But it has been a little bit confusing because ChatGPT is built on Azure. Everybody thinks that those are the privacies that they've decided to use as the privacy that you have to use, and it's very different. If we did that, no company would use our tools because no companies want their data and their customers' data to be public. So that's just table stakes for starting. And it exists today. It's GA. Tons of people are using it, so that's very secure.
Right here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kirsten, and I'm researching robot ethics. And we encounter a lot of similar challenges and opportunities. So it sounds like we're really excited about all the positive opportunities and how AI can change the human experiences. And at the same time, it also seems that we are very worried about like how is AI doing this and like about the potential misappropriation of these AI systems. So my question is, what are the incentives for corporations to integrate ethical development right from the start when we are developing AI systems and not just add it on as an ethical afterthought? And if there are no incentives right now beyond like don't do things that are illegal, how can we create these incentives for corporations?
So we've been thinking about responsible AI long before ChatGPT for lots of reasons. So like at Microsoft, you store your email data in our servers. We don't look at your email data. If we were looking at your email data, no one would actually use us. And so we have this thing that we call eyes off AI, which means that the AI can work without any person looking at mail. We don't look at our own mail either because our employees don't want some human looking at all your mail. So I think companies have been incented for a long time. Also, like in our company, we do better if there's lots of companies in the world. So we want there to be lots of companies. We don't think that there should just be like 3 or 5 AI companies and like everybody else, just use our stuff. Like we actually do, our business model works better if there's more companies in this world. I think it's a better world. So there is a lot of work in responsible AI. Every single, like I have a huge legal team. We have a huge group. Everything we do before we ship has to go through this whole process of responsible AI. And it's great actually to be thinking about this from the ground up because you can't bolt it on. Same with security that you talked about. We have a really big security group. Security, privacy, responsible AI, those are like our groups you have to run your stuff through. And sometimes your product doesn't get approved because they're like, you have to change this. And people, like you said before, sometimes you're not thinking of all of the different facets. So like we had some face detection technology and our legal department basically said we are going to be even more stringent on who can use our AI tools in Azure because we want to make sure that the use cases support, democratic governments and things like that. So it's very baked in and probably will continue to be like a huge area of innovation going forward because it's hard to predict everything that's going to happen. But it's a great question. And I think as robots or personal assistants become more personal, I think it's just going to become a bigger and bigger issue. That's a great question.
So I do have a quick question for you, Lili, and Russ and Vivek as well. There, since the emergence of AI, particularly within the last year, there's been concerns raised that we don't really know what's going on in the black box. It spews out answers and often accurate, sometimes not accurate, but we don't really know how it came to those conclusions. What's Microsoft doing to think about that? Are they doing anything to think about that? Should we know what's going on? Does it matter? I'm just curious about your thinking on that.
So I will say, like, when you use your phone, you might not really know how it's predicting the next word that you're going to type in the keyboard, or when you type in a search, you don't really know how it's getting the result that's so useful. It kind of is, it takes it to the next level with AI. And one of the things that we're spending a lot of time on to reduce, they call it hallucination, when the AI makes up stuff, to combine the AI techniques with large language models with the predictability that you have with more traditional programming. So before you get the answer back, you might run it through more tests to make sure that the answer is something that's like in your database or predictable, but you can still have the natural fluidity of being able to ask questions that you have on the input. So there's a lot of people looking at this space. I mean, it's not a solved problem, but I guess I wouldn't, it's not like the thing, I still think the thing to focus on the most is imagine it worked perfectly. What would you use it for? Because there aren't enough people thinking about that. There's so many people thinking about like how you do everything else, but I really haven't heard that many ideas that are really like amazing. That's just like, well, what do you do with it in education that imagine it work? Because you can kind of like imagine it kind of does work for a lot of cases. So like, why is that amazing? You know, I don't know. I'm definitely more on the positive side, as you can probably tell, but I don't discount the security. There's a lifetime of like job security if you're a security person in computer science and privacy and responsible AI, but you know, also on the positive side, I think.
But I also think that, dovetailing off of that is that we have a responsibility to educate the students coming in about the hallucinations, that it's not always definitive. And also the other part of it, that it is biased. And that's a major, major concern of everything that we're pulling off of the information that's coming back. But again, I think that's where I think our role, even with an IT, is that when students come in, that they have a place to go and have an understanding of what this is, how you use it, and the do's and don'ts. So they have an awareness of it that they may not have discerned or learned in K through 12.
It would be so great to do this with a group of students. Like I think students get that media is not always true, but I wonder if they just don't believe anything, you know, these days. So what is an authoritative source? And because you can't just say not, you know, everything's biased and there is no truth. I almost wonder if students have gone the other direction where I was posted in my Facebook, I was like, what sources are people reading to get their world news today? Like, what is truth, right? It's for all of us, it's a little bit dicey sometimes, right? To think about that. So I think these are questions that are great for the humanities. I don't have the answers, but I do think reliable sources are becoming rare. And part of it is probably because of the ad model for news and the desire to get eyeballs looking at your stuff. Like quality journalists are becoming rare, which is really troubling, I think, in this world, given the, you know, politics. So I would love to hear what students think and where they are, because it feels like it's a moving target and you have them here. So.
Well, I think we have time for one more question, and we have one here, and then we are going to wrap up. We know folks have meetings and things, but this will be our last question for the day.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Jason. I'm an MSBA student here at Daniels, and I'm also president of the consulting firm of the Graduate Consulting Club. So I appreciate that AI, used especially in the consulting, and that's going to be a big focus, of our club as I kind of rebuild it over the next year. The verification of fact that you were just talking about. I looked at this and kind of go a different angle that I don't think anything's covered in this topic. When you're talking privacy, data security, especially personal ownership of data. How do you see AI fitting into, say, a blockchain or a Web3, some type of general distributed ledger system or, distributed computer processing environment? Especially decentralized versus, Microsoft obviously is highly centralized systems there. And you're talking about, the trust of, hey, trust us that we don't read it or whatnot, right? So kind of how do you see that mixing in the world of permissionless trust?
That's a big question. Okay, we'll be here for another hour. No, I'm kidding. It's a great question. The internet when it started was a very different world. Like we really didn't think that it would be as popular, I think, as it has become and as pervasive for running society. And so I think what I like about blockchain and Web3 is, you know, how we think about trust in a distributed way is really at the core. I don't know if those technologies are the technologies that will persist over time, but even thinking about financial systems and like, what is money, you know, and what is trust and identity online? I think that those questions weren't thought about in the beginning, and that we suffer with security because it's being layered on as an afterthought in a way for the whole internet. Probably, maybe I'll pose a question back to you. Like in the US, we don't really have a definitive identity system like some countries. So India actually has a really great system where everybody has an identity, and then that's how you get your grain or your government stuff. But it, you know, it has a downside if you don't trust your government. So probably today about half of the countries in the world are democratic countries and half aren't. So it's, you know, we can think of it for our country, maybe the US. But yeah, I love all this stuff because I think it just makes us ask the questions about the world which we live in, and a lot of which is online, that we didn't ask in the beginning. And we will think about it in the next years, because I think we will have to think about identity and economy, like all the foundations of a society. We need to think about how that's manifested in the technology that, and they're not going to be perfect, you know, they're going to be lots of different things.
Well, I think there's two things I hope we can agree on. Number one, we have only scratched the surface of an amazing topic, amazing technology and innovation that is rapidly changing everything we do. And this conversation, I think, has gone in a number of different directions to think about how the University of Denver can be engaged around all this in a really meaningful way. The second thing is we have a very, very special friend in Lili Cheng here. So let's give her a DU round of applause, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's just make sure that we don't wait another 4 years to invite you back this time. So let's get you back more often as well. So Chase, back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming out. We truly appreciate it. Folks will be kind of milling around, so if you have questions or things, please do ask that. And I do, again, want to just give a shout out to all of our panelists and Lili Cheng for joining us. One last round of applause here. And there is actually a Web3 club, a student club here. There's a gaming club, a computer science club. And so I always encourage them, and they actually hold a hackathon. So maybe this is a way for students to join that cross-disciplinary event that we're thinking about. So thank you again for coming out. Please take refreshments, enjoy the time, and thank you so much again.